today. I'm so glad the rain went ahead and did its thing this morning, and Lord knows we needed it. So, let's just applaud the rain. I'm tired of going out watering. Yes. Okay. And Sherry Ann's going to be talking about watering and everything with the pots today, but I'm tired of watering, so I'm very grateful for the rain. So thank you all for coming. On behalf of the Eileen and Edgar Eichelhart Foundation, Eichelhart Gardens, and our director, Rick Tremont, we want to welcome everyone. And Sherry Ann Richardson, as you saw on the invitation, has not only written the 2 books about the Idiot's Guide to winter gardening and the Idiot's Guide to seed saving, but also she's written 40 books, I found out this morning. So this is just a small portion of what she brought with us today. And you're going to think I'm ADD, and maybe I am, but I just want to say on the way out today, you will be going out the back gate. So just continue through the parking lot. Last time I had everybody going out the front gate, so I want to say that before I forget. Also, when Sherry Ann is speaking, if you would reserve your questions till at the end, she will do a question and answer session. And then the other thing I want to say is I had asked her if she could stay and give another presentation tomorrow. And she said no, because she didn't know anybody that could milk her goats properly. So, if anybody here is capable of doing that, please let her know so that maybe she can go on vacation or something. Okay? So, be sure and let me know at the end. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our international author, and we are delighted to have her. And thanks everyone for coming today.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, we're going to talk about edible and tropical plants in pots today. So I want to say welcome to everyone. There are a lot of benefits of growing tropical plants in pots. The ability to enjoy the beauty and the flavors in non-tropical climates, such as where we live. Flexibility to move plants for optimal sunlight, for temperature conditions, for this funky weather that we're having. If you want to get your plants started, and then we have a frost, you can at least move them into a protected environment and keep the plants going. Container gardening is also ideal for limited spaces or urban environments. And it gives you the opportunity for enhanced pest control and disease management. And one other thing, if you're growing cool weather crops like lettuce, and you want to keep that going all summer long, and you grow your lettuce in a container, you can move that lettuce under a shade tree. And then as long as you keep that soil moist, that lettuce is not going to bolt on you. Wow. So, or you can move it into your house in the air conditioning and really give it a chill. So that is seriously what a lot of nurseries do in the spring when they start things like pansies. They will move the plants into an unheated greenhouse, and that will give the chill factor that is necessary to keep those plants small and compacted. So citrus is a wonderful container plant. I am not going to try to say the botanical names, but these are a few varieties that do really, really well in containers. If you're wondering where to get these varieties, Logees, it's Logees, has a lot of tropical container plants that you can order. When you do order, of course, they're only about this big. I mean, they're really little plants. A lot of the big box stores will get these in, but if you buy from them, check out the plant really well. You probably know that. Citrus will bloom indoors and fruit indoors. And a lot of the citrus will do that during the winter months. So while you may be thinking it's outside and why isn't it doing anything, that's normal. Okay, and those were the popular varieties. The Meyer lemon, probably most of you are familiar with that. That is one of the easy varieties to grow in a container. It is very compact. It produces a juicy, sweeter style of lemon, if that's what you like. And like I said, it's one of the more popular varieties because it just does well in containers. It just does really well indoors under those conditions. And if you don't, say, have room in your house, but you want to grow some citrus, consider someplace like your basement with a grow light. I have had citrus fruit in my basement with grow lights because the conditions were ideal. It was cool. It had the lighting it needed. It had the moisture and humidity it needed, and it produced. This orange is another variety. Did that? Yeah, that did. That does really well in containers. This is more of a tangy orange, and it is smaller. It is more for marmalades and preserves rather than fresh eating. But they are considered good for container cultivation. And if you're wondering if you will really get any kind of production from a container citrus, you will. I've done it. Are you going to get the same as a huge tree outside? No. But you are going to get enough that you can do something with it, or just, like I said, eat them fresh. This lime is a very popular one, and not only is the fruit usable, but the leaves are usable. So the leaves are often used in Thai cuisine. The fruit itself is consumed, but a lot of people use it more for the zest than for the fruit itself. And they really add an ornamental element to your garden. They're really nice to set the citrus trees outside among your perennials or your annuals, or outside on your patio or your balcony in the summertime, and have that conversation piece plant. So this is another orange that is juicy, and they have a sweet flavor. They're easy to peel if you're looking for something like that. And again, the compact size and the ability to tolerate cooler temperatures compared to other citrus varieties is fantastic. Now, I did not put this in there. Well, let me do this one, and then I will tell you about another one. Blood orange. They are known for their vibrant red flesh and the unique flavor. You've probably seen these in the stores a lot here. And they do require a little bit more care. So if you want to grow blood orange, it's going to take a little more than some of the other citrus varieties. When selecting citrus varieties for container gardening, look for dwarf or semi-dwarf. Keep in mind that just because it says it is, does not mean that it's going to be dwarf or semi-dwarf. You are going to have to prune that and make that be the shape you want and the size that you want. You can prune the roots. So if you only want, say, a container this size, but you want a citrus tree and you don't want to ever pot it up, you need to take that out and you need to prune those roots. When you prune the roots, I suggest submerging it into a container with water with some vitamin B1 or some Super Thrive, and cut those roots underneath the container. And here is why I do that. I learned this when I worked at a nursery. When you cut the roots, just like when you cut flower stems and they're submerged underneath water, it's going to suck up the water, not the air. You don't want the air going up. You want water going up and filling those roots or stems. The Super Thrive or the vitamin B1 is to help it with shock. And you can actually leave it sit there for 24 hours if you want, and just let it absorb all that fertilizer and vitamins and stuff, and then repot it after 24 hours. Just don't forget about it. So, and you do need to fertilize your citrus with something to keep it going and keep it producing. Now, with that said, there is a variety of citrus that will live outdoors here in Indiana. It is called Flying Dragon. It is a Puncerus, which I probably said wrong, but if you look up Citrus Flying Dragon, you will find it. It is very thorny. It does need a little bit of winter protection. I did not do that, and that's how I ended up losing mine. We had a really cold winter, and I was like, oh, it's lived out there without anything all this time, and it did not make it. But I had it probably 5 or 6 years in the ground with no winter protection at all, and it did produce for me. So another trick, if things are producing towards the end of fall and you want it to produce and it is in the ground, build yourself some kind of cold frame over it. This does not have to be fancy. The key, you don't want any frost cover or any plastic, and you want 6 mil plastic if you're going to do this. Do not let it touch any part of the plant, because when it gets cold and it touches that plant, it's going to transfer, it's going to damage the plant. So you have to have that airspace around, but that will give it a little extra protection, and each layer of plastic is typically going to raise you by 1 zone. So if you're in zone 6 and you do 1 layer of 6 mil plastic, anything inside of that should be a zone 7. If you do 2 layers, you should be up to a zone 8. It doesn't always work that way. You need to know your microclimate in your yard, and you learn that by taking your temperature in different areas of your yard, because it will be different. There's going to be cold areas, there's going to be warmer areas. If you're going to push zones, you want those warmer areas. Okay, the next one is bananas. Yes?
A question about when is the time to prune the roots, and when is the time to do the fertilizer, and what kind of fertilizer?
I like to do the root pruning in the spring if I'm going to do it, because then we have the warm temperatures and it's going to grow. The fertilizer, there's actually a citrus fertilizer that you can buy specifically made for citrus trees. Sometimes if you go to the big box stores, it'll say fruit and citrus. I have seen that, not often though. But what you want to remember about fertilizer, the first number, the nitrogen, that is your green growth. What you're going to get with that is growth. Think about grass. You fertilize with high nitrogen to make that green and lush. Your middle number, that is your flower number. So if the middle number on the fertilizer is high, that's going to promote the flowering, which is what you want for your annual plants. If that last number on the fertilizer is high, that's going to promote your fruit. So this is why a lot of people will do something like a 12-12-12, because it's a balanced fertilizer. And it will work, but if you're having trouble, then you want to think, what am I having trouble with? Am I having trouble with the growth, the flowering, or the fruiting and the production? So, and it's the same way with bananas on fertilizer. There is a specific banana fertilizer if you want to go that route. A lot of the tropical fertilizers you're importing from places down south, like Florida, or out in California, and you're going to pay a tiny fortune in shipping. So you can use just, whatever you get a hold of, but if you really want to go that extra, there are fertilizers for that. There are a lot of compact banana varieties that will produce edible fruit. Again, Logis is who I suggest, because they have an array, including the little teeny tiny bananas. The dwarf Cavendish, which again, I'm sorry, my pronunciation is not the best. That's the one I have. That's going to get a little bit taller, and it's not gonna be big, but it's gonna get 6 to 8 feet. And it does produce an edible banana. It is one of the most popular varieties for container gardening. Then there is a super dwarf. The only place I have ever seen the super dwarf for sale is Lowe's. That doesn't mean you can't find it someplace else, but it's not easily accessible. Williams hybrid, I'm actually not familiar with. I have never seen that one any place in the places I shop. And the bottom one is a semi-hardy here. I did not have any luck with it. I have had Musa Bijou come back every year. But I tried all of the semi-hardy bananas in my yard, and Musa Bijou was the only one that actually came back. So, and it has never fruited for me, although I know of someone in southern Indiana, way down, they got theirs to fruit. And they wanted the fruit, so they dug the banana out of the ground after years and put it in a container and took it inside, because they didn't think they could protect it long enough to get the fruit. So, this is actually one of my little dwarf ones. Like I said, it is one of the most popular varieties. It does produce a sweet, creamy fruit. And this says 4 to 6. My experience has been more 6 to 8. It will put all kinds of pups off of it. Now, this is the way they grow if you've gone down south and you've actually seen bananas growing in their natural environment. However, my friend that lives in Puerto Rico, I asked him about that, and he said if you really want fruit, you keep the pups cut away and you keep one main stalk in your pot. And so this is one of the little ones that I divided. You can see some others back there. This is the super dwarf. It grows 3 to 4 feet tall. I have seen mature pictures of this plant with fruit, but I've never bought one. And it's perfect for if you want a smaller banana in your house, you don't want that extra height. I think bananas are really easy to care for. As long as you keep that soil moist, they do pretty good. But here's the thing. You need 2 years of growth to get them to fruit. They are heavy feeders, and they need the grow lights. And you don't have to buy the big fancy grow lights that are hundreds or thousands of dollars. You can buy the screw-in grow lights. You can go to any of the farm stores. You can get the clip-on. I don't even know what they're called, but they're clip-ons. They use them for chickens. They use them for lizards. And just screw one of those grow lights in. Maybe you want 2 coming at 2 different angles for the plant to get a lot of heavy light there. Don't just rely on your windows. I have south-facing windows. It's still not enough light. I have grow lights. I have some square ones I hung from my ceiling up above. Because they need it if they're gonna fruit. Like I said, this is one that I haven't seen, but again, it's a 4 to 6 foot variety that you can get if you want to give it a try. Here's the other thing about bananas. Bananas produce seed in the fruit. Most of you probably don't know that because you're buying the commercial variety at the grocery store. But a lot of varieties of bananas, if you get them to fruit, they're going to have larger black seeds inside of them. And that's why you need to be really careful which variety you buy, because otherwise you're going to be picking those seeds out. And like I said, this one is supposed to have a compact growth habit. It has medium-sized sweet fruits, and again, 4 to 6 feet. I don't know if you want to try, if you're going to try to plant it outside, you want to plant it a foot deep, which is not ever what it's going to tell you. But you want to go a foot deep, you want to be sure you have good drainage. And in the wintertime, you want to come up about this high. And we do alternating layers of dry leaves. We do a layer of black plastic over that to keep the moisture out, and then we do additional dry leaves, this big pile. And you can put a fencing around it if you want to keep the leaves from blowing away. We typically don't. But you've got to keep that center dry. And that's the same way with palm trees. If you're going to push your zone here in Indiana, you've got to keep that center dry. Because once that water gets in, it's going to kill the plant. It's just too cold here. Okay. And I told you that it's important for the lighting, the humidity levels. I typically mist my plants. I don't run a humidifier or anything. I just go along with the mister and spray them. And they may not yield as much fruit as if they were outside in the ground in a tropical environment, but you probably don't want pounds and pounds of fruit anyway. You know, a couple little clusters is probably fine for the typical home gardener that just wants to grow some bananas because I can. Oops. Okay. Pineapple. That's another really easy houseplant that a lot of people don't. Yes, this pineapple came from a plant from Hawaii that someone brought back. And it is, and this is one of the smaller ones that you would buy in the stores that they call ornamental. Those are edible. Oops. Okay. So it is so much fun to grow your own pineapple. And it tastes like nothing you can buy at the store. It is really good. Okay, so you want to select a suitable pineapple variety, like Smooth Cayenne or Sugarloaf. If you're like me, my container is probably about this tall, probably about this wide. And like I said, my banana plant actually came from Hawaii. It would grow in the ground over there. Most people don't want a pot that big because they're not pretty plants as such. They're spiky and they're kind of dwarf and compact, and they look like a bromelaad, except they don't have the pretty flowers most of the time. They're just kind of green. So the smaller varieties you can get by with a pot that's at least 12 inches wide, but you need to make sure it has room for growth. Because if that pineapple can't grow, it's just gonna dry up and die on you. So I always recommend a well-draining potting mix. Now with that said, the person that I got my pineapple from used clay soil. All of his tropicals that he gave me were in clay soil. And we have been dumping and getting rid of that, except the pineapple I couldn't because it had actually started its fruit stalk. So I had no choice but to just leave it. I had also expected the pineapple plant to die and put out pups after I harvested it. It's not only still alive, it's starting to grow again. So it is still in clay soil. If I were doing it and starting from scratch, I would use a well-draining soil mix. I really like peat moss with just enough vermiculite and perlite that you can easily see it, but it's not equal parts. It's more like 2 parts peat, 1 part vermiculite, and 1 part perlite. And that's the mix that I like for tropical plants. Okay, if that's my pineapple plant, and that's the actual one from Hawaii. In the clay soil was stuff that I dumped on top and hoping that it would work its way through and start loosening that clay up. The top of that pineapple plant, and you can do this with store-bought pineapples, you cut it off and then you have to let it dry. If it doesn't dry enough, and I let mine dry until the top the very bottom pieces start getting brown and pulling off, and then I pull those leaves off and that's when I consider it ready to go. You can plant the pineapple top in a potting mix and root it that way. But here's another way you can do it. If you have a small jar, you put some water in it. You want the pineapple top to just set right above where that water is, like just right there. And it will throw out roots that will go down into that water. That's the same way that you do, I believe it's avocados. You can float the seed on top of the water and it will throw the roots down. And that will keep it from just rotting. Because it's going to reach for the water. Like every plant, the plant roots will reach for the water. So as it's starting to make those little nubs, it's going to know that water's there and it's going to go down and get it. But if you want to put it in soil, just keep the soil moist because it needs that. They need proper sunlight. They need to be 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day. And if it's limited and it is still trying to produce fruit, you need to add grow lights. Because if you don't, you're going to end up losing that pineapple. They will abort and that'll be that. So you need the potting mix evenly moist. You don't want to overwater because again, the plants are susceptible to root rot. I let the top layer of the soil dry out slightly. I stick my finger in. If I pull my finger out and there's all kinds of soil, I don't even water at all. If I pull my finger out and there's nothing, I will give it a good drenching. And this is how I water all of my tropical plants in the summertime. In the wintertime, it's once a month. In the summertime, when I water, I fill the pot to the top, I let it drain, and I do that 2 more times, and I walk away. And that way it's got a thorough drenching. Because if you've ever been to Key West, and this is where I came up with my watering technique, it rains every afternoon there. So all of those tropical plants are getting water on a daily basis. We don't have that here. So I water as needed, give it a good drenching, and just walk away. In the wintertime, maybe once a month, because I only keep my tropicals at 50 degrees in the wintertime. That's all they need to set dormant, but stay alive and be ready to go outside the following summer. So you also want to fertilize with a balanced water-soluble fertilizer. I like to use fish emulsion. The other thing that I used to use, and I don't know if you can still get this because I know that Annie passed away, but it was called Moo-Poo tea. And I don't know if anybody has taken her business over or not, but that is a compost tea that you can make, and it was made from her cow manure. And if you're going to make compost tea, I highly suggest that you get a air pump for a fish tank and pump some air into that bucket with your compost tea. That's putting extra oxygen in because plant roots need oxygen. Okay, pineapples like between 70 and 85 degree temperatures and a fairly high humidity level. I would say that my greenhouse maintains 70 to 85% humidity. Again, you can do this by misting the plant. You can do this by getting some pebbles and a saucer, putting it under your plant pot, and filling just to the top of the pebbles with water. You don't want a plant, with the exception of rainforest plants, you don't want a plant to sit in water ever. Because even though you may think it's okay and you may think, oh, the roots aren't down there, the roots will reach for the water, and when they get down there, you will start having root rot, you will start losing your plant. Okay, and as it grows, it will do this huge spiky leaf thing, and those actually hurt if you bump up against them. So you want to be careful of that, and you want to remove any damaged yellowing leaves. The plant doesn't need that anymore. So just use some gloves, some scissors, and cut them off. Pineapples normally take 18 to 24 months to produce fruit. The pineapple does come from the center. It'll send up a stalk, and then you'll have one pineapple up at the top. And you do have to have pollination. I have no idea what pollinated mine. Could have been almost anything. So just because it's out of its native environment doesn't mean that other pollinators won't come to it. You could also hand pollinate if you needed to. This is my pineapple, and we use a knife to cut it. Sometimes you can just gently twist, but I wanted to get pictures so I could show this. So we used a knife, we left everything else there except that pineapple top. And that's what a pineapple looks like inside that has ripened on the plant. They are so sweet, and they're almost a gold color. They are really, really rich. They're very juicy. I don't know if you can tell from the picture, but like absolutely nothing I've ever had. So well worth the time and effort to do this. Papaya. You can grow papayas in containers. You can grow papayas from the seed that comes on the papaya. Again, float it. And let the roots go down into the water. They make specific items that you can buy for floating seeds. And they just sit on top, but you can stick toothpicks or anything to create something to hold it up above. Papayas get very large if you grow from seed. So if you're going to buy one, you want a dwarf or compact variety. Again, look for one that is suitable for container culture. Otherwise, you're going to have this big, huge papaya, which is what I had, and they just keep going up because that's what they want to do. And yes, you can cut them back, you can prune them, you can train them, but you really want something dwarf. You need a large, sturdy pot with good drainage, something like a 15-gallon container. And if you have groundhogs on your property, don't set the papaya outside. That's what happened to mine. The groundhog ate the whole thing. So, yeah. Again, you want a well-draining potting mix that's high in organic matter. I suggest 3 inches of compost on top of all of your container plants in the spring. And you can use compost, perlite, coconut coir, or peat moss. I don't like coconut coir. I know it's the new popular thing. I don't like it. I don't think the plants do as good in it. Again, you want to start with a young plant, or you want to start with seeds. Just go with the plant. And, you know, this says potting mix. I seriously would not do that, because something that I found, I don't like to start plants in potting mix. I will either suspend the seed above the water, or I will wrap the seed in a damp, moist paper towel and put it in a little plastic baggie and seal it up and check it every day. And if the paper towel starts getting yucky, I will pitch it. I will put the seed in hydrogen peroxide and rinse it off and start all over with a new moist paper towel. The reason for this is I can see what the seed is doing. If it's in soil and it rots, you can dig around, but why do that when there's an easier way to do it? So papayas need sunlight and warm, sunny conditions. They do fine at 50 degrees because I had mine in my greenhouse and it did fine. They do need regular watering, they need moist soil. Again, let the top dry out a little bit between waterings. Deep watering sessions, that's really important. And balance with a fertilized organic fertilizer. So you need to prune and support the plant. Like I said, they get really, really tall. They will topple over. So you need to have some kind of staking in place for them. I suggest putting the stake in place as soon as you transplant it up. That way you're not driving a stake through the roots and potentially damaging the plant. And prune away any dead or damaged leaves because you want to encourage good airflow, just like with any other type of plant. They are sensitive to frost and cold weather conditions. So it needs to come inside during the winter. And they also don't do well in strong winds. It will flip that plant right over. They are typically pollinated by insects with cross-pollination. So you may want to have 2 or 3 if you're actually going to grow them. Or you may want to hand pollinate and see how well that works. And you can do that with a small paintbrush or a cotton swab. And it's really easy to hand pollinate. You just brush one flower, go brush another flower, and just keep going. Papayas take 6 to 9 months to bear fruit. You want to harvest when it's yellow or orange and give slightly when it's pressed. And use a sharp knife or scissors to cut the fruit from the plant. So if you want to give them the care that they need, that's another good container plant. They have really beautiful leaves. They really are an interesting plant to grow, but maybe not as easy as bananas. They take a little more. There are tons of benefits of homegrown tropical fruit. You get that superior taste that you're just not going to get at the grocery store. The freshness and the nutritional value. A lot of our food that we get at the grocery store is at least a week old. It wasn't harvested at the optimum time. So your nutritional value isn't there, which can lead to a lot of health problems because your nutrition isn't coming from your food like it should. You could choose to go chemical-free and organic if you want. You don't have to, but you can. You're going to save money in the long run. You're more sustainable because you're reducing those food miles that has to travel. And when things like COVID happened, if you have your own food, you don't have to worry about it. You know, you're just going to go wherever you're growing and you're going to pick your own stuff. It's a therapeutic and enjoyable hobby. I really enjoy growing my tropical plants. And part of my plan was to grow tropical fruits and spices. And like cinnamon, I had nutmeg growing, you know, different things, Theobroma cacao, which is chocolate, so that I didn't have to worry about whatever was going on out there in the world. I could just go into my greenhouse, pick what I wanted, and turn it into what I wanted. There are a lot of variety and exotic options if you grow your own. When you start doing your research and you start looking, I love the red-leafed banana varieties. I don't know that I'm ever going to get fruit from them, but those red leaves are so different from anything else, and I really enjoy that. You know, there are so many different varieties of chocolate. And that was something I learned when I started growing my own Theobroma cacao trees, was that, you know, this one, and this is the type of chocolate I'm going to get from it, and then this one is a little bit different. And they have different taste. Of course, the environment you grow them in is going to contribute to that in some ways. And it's an educational experience. I mean, when you grow these plants, you really learn so much because you have to learn to care for them. So again, we've gone over the superior taste, the freshness and nutritional value, the chemical-free and organic, the cost savings. And once these plants are established, once you have them, they will reproduce here, even in a container. So once you have them, you have them. And another thing, the educational experience, something that I have enjoyed, I give a lot of talks on chocolate. And so I really get to share my knowledge and experiences with other people. I've had a lot of people in nursing homes and stuff that get a lot of enjoyment out of growing some of these plants. And again, while they may never get the fruit, it's a great conversation piece. Yeah. And it's very rewarding. Okay, now there is also a lot of ornamental tropical plants you can grow in pots. Cannas, elephant ears, bird of paradise, plumera. I probably could have had 100 things on this list. I love the vibrant colors and foliage of cannas. There are so many varieties. And whether you want light foliage or dark colored, a single colored or a double colored flower like that, there are just so many options. Brian's Botanicals in Louisville has some awesome cannas. And elephant ears, this is from Brian's. This is one of the elephant ears that he developed. He has one called Redemption. It has a pink center in it. He didn't have it. He has it now. He didn't have it when I was down there a couple years ago. He had sent it out to have it tissue cultured to get it in to people's hands. So I got to see the one plant that he had in his garden, but none to take home. But this particular elephant ear looks kind of blue in the right lighting. So it's kind of a blue-black elephant ear. It's kind of metallic-y. And you can get from small to large. You don't have to take cannas or elephant ears inside in pots. You can just uproot them and put them in a bag and put them in your basement or your attached garage. And they're going to be fine all winter, and then you can just pot it back outside. Bird of paradise. Now, here's what a lot of people don't know. The bird of paradise that they typically sell at Lowe's and other places, the great big tall one, that is the white bird of paradise. It gets 15 feet tall and typically will not bloom in cultivation. Now, I'm not going to say it never will, but it is not the one you want. You want the orange one, which, as you can see, has the lower leaves. It will bloom in cultivation. There's also a white, or not a white, sorry, there is a white. There's a black bird of paradise. I've had it. It's another big one. So typically it's not going to bloom unless you have just the right ceiling, the right environment. But the orange one, which is a smaller, more compact one, is perfect for containers, and it will bloom in your house. And it is beautiful. Plumera. That is another plant that will bloom in your house. It's easy to grow from seed. If you're going to grow from seed, do the paper towel method. And then when it sprouts, barely put that root down into the soil, leave most of the seed above the soil. You just need that root and a little bit covered up because you don't want it to rot. And I think mine was about 3 years old when it bloomed the first time that I grew from seed. They stay fairly compact because they're a slower growing plant. And I think my pot was maybe about this big around, maybe about like that. So not a lot. And they come in so many colors. There's whites, there's yellows, there's pinks, I'm supposed to have a red one. I'm waiting to see if it blooms and it's actually red. if you look up Quimeras, there are growers down in Florida that have some that just will blow your mind. There is one, it has streamers that come down from the flowers. It's called a curly. And it is absolutely stunning. Vegetables in pots. Have any of you grown vegetables in pots? Okay. Lettuce. Lettuce is an easy one. The butterheads, the loose leaf, the romaines, those do great in pots. Lettuce is also the easiest vegetable to grow all winter round. Yeah, all winter round, outdoors in Indiana, undercover. And it is the sweetest, tastiest lettuce you will ever taste if you grow it in the winter. The bibs and the butter crunches are excellent for small pots. They form loose, compact heads with tender leaves and have a mild, buttery flavor. These also work well in hydroponic gardens. If you have an arrow garden or something small like that, this is a good variety for those. The loose leaf, I love the loose leaf, especially for winter. The salad bowl and the oak leaf are my favorites. And it's a continuous harvest once you plant those. And in the wintertime, if you want to keep it going, literally 2 tomato cages, frost cover, 6 mil plastic. Make sure that plastic is tight at the bottom and nothing is touching that lettuce. You go out about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't matter if there's snow on the ground or whatever. You lift it up. You cut what you want. You go as fast as you can because you don't want to expose it. I mean, you have to a little bit, but you don't want to just, open it. You cut what you want. You cover it up. If you go out in the morning and you open, it's going to look wilted and dead because of the frost and the cold. But if you go in the afternoon after that area has warmed up inside that cold frame, it's going to be perfect. And it's going to taste fantastic. And this is something that everybody can do. The romaine lettuces are a little bit taller. We have done those over winter in cold frames. And they have done fine too. So there is now Botanical Interest has a red romaine that is better to grow in the wintertime, although I did the green, but I got the red this year because they sent them to me for free to trial, and it's really pretty. It's something really, really different. So here are some tips. This is one of my bib lettuces in my arrow garden in a grow tent in my basement. So you need a container that is about 6 to 8 inches deep, and wider is better. But again, this is an arrow garden, and I mean, look at that. That is a beautiful, I didn't even want to cut it. It was so pretty. I wanted to see how big it would grow. You need a well-draining potting mix. Again, peat moss, compost, perlite, vermiculite. Don't use heavy garden soil. It's not going to work well in a container. Lettuce needs cooler temperatures. It will grow in the shade. So if you have a lot of shade, grow some lettuce. It says 4 to 6 hours of direct sun. My lettuce doesn't always get that in the summertime because I have lots of trees and it does fine. If you only have sunny areas and you want to grow lettuce in the summer, any kind of shade cloth that you can rig up over your lettuce to throw shade on that lettuce is going to work. Whether you invest in actual shade cloth, whether you take a piece of wood and you make a makeshift shelter that is going to shade that lettuce, anything. So don't be afraid to experiment and try. Again, evenly moist, and you want to water at the base of the plants, not overhead, which is best for all plants to always water at the base, because when you water overhead, it promotes disease. You also want to water as early in the morning as you can. If that's a problem because of work or scheduling, get yourself some drip irrigation. You'll thank yourself later for that. These are some Bibb lettuces that I grew and some tomatoes. I'm not huge on the fertilization. I'm using worm castings from Simple Grow. And that's literally, I am putting it in my soil, mixing it into the top inch before I plant, and that's what I'm using for the whole season. And that's all I'm doing. And you see they look beautiful. Succession planting, if you want to replant every 2 to 3 weeks, if you don't want to try to keep your plants going because you think, oh, that's just too much work, I don't want to do that. Just keep adding new lettuce seed every 2 to 3 weeks. And then just pull the old plants up as you harvest. And that's going to give you a steady supply throughout the summer months. I like to harvest lettuce when it is smaller, especially in the summer, because it's going to be more tender that way. So in the wintertime, you can let it get a little bit bigger and it's not really going to matter either way because you've got the colder temperatures. Also, if you're going to grow lettuce in the winter, I only water about once a month. I don't get overhyped about the water because the ground is already cold. We've already got snow. Even though that's inside of a container, you know, protected, you're going to have some seepage. And the soil stays moist, so you don't have to worry about it. Experiment with different types of lettuce. There are so many types of lettuce. And here is something that I just learned. The deer's tongue lettuce is actually a little bit bitter, and that is healthy for you. I was not aware of some of the health benefits of that particular type of lettuce, and a friend sent me some information on it, and I was like, wow, that is definitely worth mixing in to my other sweeter lettuces and having it there. This is a full-size tomato in a 5-gallon pot. I do this almost every year because people tell me all the time, but I can't grow a tomato. Yes, you can. There are determinate and indeterminate types of tomatoes. I don't worry about that. To be truthful with you, I don't worry about it. I get myself a 5-gallon bucket. I put big holes in the bottom of it. And we use one of those, what's that called, Jeff? For putting in doorknobs. Yeah, hole saw. We use one of those to make, and then you can put a piece of window screen in the bottom to keep the dirt from just going through. Okay. And what I do is I plant the tomato plant on the bottom of the bucket. I fill up around it with soil as it grows. So that's why that one's so far down, because I need to add more soil. I take all the bottom leaves off, keep filling it. I have my trellis in there. What this does, tomato stems will root themselves. The more roots they have, the more they can take up, the stronger the plant is going to be. So in the yard, when I plant out, I plant my tomato all the way down in the ground up to 2 leaves. I leave 2 leaves sticking out of the ground, and the rest of that stem is below the ground. It'll grow. It'll root itself. When the high winds come, that plant's going to be strong. It's going to have a lot of roots there. The other thing that I have just learned and am doing this year, tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers. You take all the bottom leaves off up to the first fruit. When the plant gets so tall, you start laying the plant over like this on some kind of widget or tomato cage or whatever you have. Start laying it like this. And everything that is laid like this has no leaves. That allows more sunlight to get to the fruit. It allows heavier production. It stops some of the pest and disease issues because you have no foliage there. And anything that's going like this is going to produce more. That's why they espalier fruit trees, because when you start going like this, it forces the plant to produce more. I also learned this year, tomatoes and peppers you want to feed once a week. I had never thought about this. And when I found that out, I have been doing it, and it actually works. But this tomato plant will produce just like it was in the ground. And sometimes the roots will grow through the bottom of those holes right into the ground, which again is not a big deal. Now, if you want to do determinate and indeterminate plants, the determinate ones are compact and bushy. They're going to reach a certain height. A lot of people like the determinate if they're going to grow them in containers because they are a smaller plant. Indeterminate are vining and continue to grow and produce fruit until frost, but they require more support and more space. So if you're really concerned about the height, you want to pay attention. You want to look for the determinate ones, such as the Celebrity, the Patio, the Tiny Tim, the Red Robin, or the Bush Early Girl. Tiny Tim is a little tiny variety of tomato that is perfect for hanging baskets. The Bush Early Girl, I love those because I can plant it earlier and I can keep it going longer. I have harvested ripe tomatoes from inside of my tunnel house, unheated, on January 1st. And actually took a video that I put on my YouTube channel of that. So I had the tunnel house, I had the frost cover, I had the plastic over it, and I didn't think I was gonna have anything. I went in to get some lettuce and it's like, that's a ripe tomato. And I didn't get to eat it because my dog ate it. So, I set it down and okay. The minimum size of container for tomatoes is 12 to 18 inches in diameter. Again, you want adequate drainage. Larger pots give more room to grow. That's why I like 5-gallon buckets. I've had really good luck with them. I do not like the upside down topsy-turvy tomato things. I've never had success with them, ever. A well-draining potting mix. Again, the same peat moss, vermiculite, perlite, something high in organic matter. You need a good sturdy support system. My grandpa made tomato cages out of, I think it was farm fencing. Yeah, and he cut them into maybe sections this wide, and he used wire and he tied them together. And I ended up getting those after he passed away. And I highly recommend, if you're gonna grow a lot of tomatoes and you have the means to do this, scrap those things from the store and just make your own. And use some fence posts or bamboo stakes or whatever to anchor them to the ground. The tomatoes are gonna be happier, they're not gonna flop over all the time, and they're not the big pain in the you-know-what to put in the ground. So, these are some Mountain Fresh tomatoes. You need full sun for tomatoes. However, with that said, I have grown tomatoes at the edge of a wood lines that got some afternoon shade. I did not get as much production, but it did work. Consistent watering is essential for tomatoes. That's going to solve a lot of your problems right there. I water the ones in my tunnel house every single day. And I have never had any problems with those. So I just keep that soil consistently moist. Outside, I'm not so good about it. I try to give them an inch a week. So sometimes more. We have drip irrigation, 15 minutes at a time, and that seems to take care of it. Water deeply. Don't just go along and, really get that water deep when you do water. Use a balanced slow release fertilizer or an organic fertilizer or 3 inches of compost. You can use liquid fertilizer to supplement throughout the growing season. I use the fish emulsion. Again, I know what this says, but now that I am doing it and I'm taking those lower leaves off up to the fruit, I recommend that. They don't need those lower leaves once that fruit starts setting. And no, they don't look as pretty, they don't look as bushy, but you're not really growing tomatoes for the beauty. You're growing for the fruit. These are some of the tomatoes that I've grown in my garden. As you can see, I like a lot of different colors and styles of tomatoes. And I think this was an end of the season harvest because I will go through right before frost and I will pick every single tomato, green, red, whatever. The green ones, I wrap in a layer of newspaper. I put it in a brown lunch bag. I fold it all up. I put all of that in another brown grocery bag and I put it down in my basement. You don't want to go more than about 2 layers deep. And then I check them throughout the winter and I can have fresh tomatoes because they will ripen like that, clear into the end of December easily. So, but you have to have a cool place to do that. A garage may work if it's attached and it doesn't get super cold. Okay, these are some pepper varieties that work well in containers. Let's face it, most peppers are small and do. But if you're looking for a smaller variety, try these. You want a 12 to 16 inch pot to give it room. And also think about the stability of the pepper plant. You may want to stake the pepper plant. I did not do this year, but along with the removing of the leaves, I was told to do 1 center stem on peppers and tomatoes. Now I did that on my tomatoes, but on my peppers, because they were already branched when I got them, I left the 3 branch, but anything else I'm taking off. And mine are in the ground, so I'm going to use stakes and rope to help support as they keep going taller. So again, a well-drained potting mix, adequate moisture, and heavy garden soil like our clay soils can hinder drainage. So peppers typically like 6 to 8 hours of sun. And I also learned that growing peppers a little bit more on the drier side is going to give them a little bit more heat, but not too dry. You want moist, but not necessarily watering as much as you would a tomato. So I do suggest moist soil and deeply, again, when you water. And I know some people say, well, drainage holes don't really matter in containers, but I think they do. I really, really feel like containers need good drainage. When you feed your vegetables, go for a fertilizer that's recommended for vegetables. I know a lot of people just use a general fertilizer for everything, but I think it makes a difference. So, You want to remove any diseased or yellowing leaf. You want to remove the peppers as soon as they're ripe. Don't leave them on the plant because it's going to encourage more production if you keep everything that's ripe picked and off your plant. Aphids, spider mites, and whiteflies are problems with peppers. They can also be problems with tomatoes. A lot of times just a strong spray from a garden hose will take care of that, but again, you have to stay on it. I use diatomaceous earth, food grade, on anything that's having a problem. And you don't want to breathe that in when you sprinkle it on, but it's natural. It kills any soft-bodied insect by slicing it up that grows across it. And if your pets or your kids get into it and they stick their fingers in their mouth, it's not a big deal. It's food grade. This is not the swimming pool stuff. This is different. I also use that on my livestock. I put it in their food, a little sprinkling like salt and pepper. I put it in the barn, and I don't have to worm, and I don't have parasites because it takes care of all of that. Good air circulation is absolutely essential. If you are using an enclosed environment like a tunnel, if you don't have good airflow, you need to get a fan in there to keep that air circulation going. Use sharp scissors or a knife when you're cutting your pepper plants, and enjoy your successful pepper harvest. So bush beans, has anybody grown those in containers? Yeah. Okay. You want a 12 to 18 inch container. You want to choose compact varieties. I like pole beans. So I actually did try this once. It didn't work well for me. Again, the same well-draining organic matter. You can either do transplants or you can sow the seeds directly. Honestly, I wouldn't waste my time doing transplants of peppers. Beans, I'm sorry. I would just plant the seeds directly. If you keep that soil moist, those beans are going to germinate really quickly. Just plant them about 1 to 2 inches deep. The rule of thumb that I use when planting seeds, 1 to 1.5 times deeper than the seed itself. For things like carrots and lettuce, those really fine seeds, I plant them directly on top of the soil. I tamp them down with my hands, and I water well, and I keep that moist, and my stuff germinates fine. So also, if you're going to do pole beans in a container or in the ground, put your supports up as soon as you plant. Otherwise, you're going to forget where those beans are, or you're going to have problems later on, especially pole beans, because once they come up, they're going to want to start vining. So full sun, 70 to 85 degree temperatures, and they don't like temperatures below 50 degrees because it's going to stun them a little bit. So again, constantly moist soil, a little bit more water during the warmer days, and avoid overhead watering if at all possible. You can use a trellis, a stake, or wire mesh for support. You can buy supports. And you want to avoid excessive handling, which is why you want your climbing supports in place. So, I know we're running out of time here. So, okay, and there are advantages of growing vegetables in pots. You get your fresh organic produce. You can optimize your space. You have the flexibility and mobility, easy maintenance. You can extend your growing season by bringing your plants inside. You can have aesthetic appeal and accessibility. You can move those containers right into your flower beds and mix them, and you're going to have some good benefits from that. And learning and experimentation. So, again, it's your basic, no matter what you're growing. And, okay, we did all that. Okay, and be sure to check out my books and my blogs. Exotic Gardening and Experimental Homesteader are my two main websites. I do have shop.experimentalhomesteader.com, where I have a lot of online courses that I'm doing, including a course on the first part of my book of year-round gardening that I've started. I'm going to go through all the way through the book and actually do the whole book as a course, but I'm doing it in sections. I have a lot of printables, garden planning worksheets and stuff like that I have up for sale as well. I have a lot of free information on my two websites. I have a lot of printable freebies too. If you want to try something, you can come sign up for my email list and try the printable for free. I have books in the back for sale, including some CDs back there. And are there any questions? Yes.
Can you speak to seed germination in a cold frame? I have not had good luck in colder weather, and it's usually lettuces or greens, and I just haven't had good luck with the seed germination. Is there I don't know if it's because of the temperature, or is there a helpful hint with that?
I do all of mine, including lettuce and the damp paper towels. I transplant them.
Okay.
Yes, because I think it's easier. If you're going to do it in the soil, you want to use a seed-started mix, vermiculite on top, and then try it that way. You may just not be getting the temperatures. December 21st is winter sowing, and sometimes those seeds, what I've learned, because I do crazy things. I have gone outside January 1st and I planted seeds in the ground of the colder crops. And then I have planted at the correct planting time. The stuff planted at the correct planting time came up earlier than the stuff that I had planted in January. But when the stuff that I planted in January came up, it was a stronger plant.
Okay.
So if that made any sense to you. Yeah, so sometimes it's just waiting that little bit longer.
You'll even do tiny seeds like lettuce seeds in the paper towel though?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try.
Yes. And I use tweezers to pick them up because you don't want to touch the root. So I will use tweezers to pick it up.
Yes.
You're welcome. Yes. Dichotomaceous earth. Dichotomaceous earth and food grade. You can get it at the health food store, or you can get it at places like Tractor Supply back in the livestock section. So, any other questions?
We want to thank you very much for all your wisdom.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming